Alright, we're back with more NBA coverage, and in this one, I'll be covering all the action that I've watched from March 1st onward. I guess in that kind of sense, with the way that I'm probably going to go about this one. So to get straight into it, I'll focus on teams overall and get into a few games that way. To look at the Spurs in this time, the stretch did not start out hot for them. I watched the Knicks game, for example, on March 1st, and after them leading for a short time, they proceeded to give up a 26-2 run across 8 minutes, and then proceeded to lose that game by 25 points against the Knicks team that's been on their own kind of rocky road, and we'll get to that in just a second. But from that point forward, and even for the last, stretch of the season past the All-Star break, they entered that game with an 11-game win streak, and they've pretty much continued to do that. I guess you can say that with that in mind, they've pretty much won, somewhere around 18 of their last, 20 games. That's pretty damn impressive, to say the least. And I've been hearing the narrative that, okay, hey, we have to see it in the playoffs. Oh, they're too young. They're not going to have the experience. Those things may very much be true. But with all the different games that I watched in this time, and even some of the ones that I did not, the matchup against the 76ers, the matchup against the Clippers, the Rockets, and the Celtics, how many different fucking ways do they need to show you that they can go out there and win ball games in order for you to get it running through your head that this team is not going to be a pushover come playoff time? That they have some of the mentality that you would need to have that translate into a playoff setting. How many different ways do they need to take an opponent down to prove to you that they can get it done in a much bigger stage? Yeah, it's a little far removed from them beating the Thunder 3 times in 12 days, but at the same time, the mentality, that spirit of grinded out basketball is definitely present within this team. I think no game for me proves that more than this matchup against the Clippers that I'm watching live on March 6th. Now, I will say that I was alternating between it at points, and for a while, it was looking drastic. But this Spurs team, despite trailing by as much as 25 fucking points in that game, managed to come all the way back with the efforts of both Julian Champagnie putting up a damn 17-point third quarter, just lighting it up from 3 and keeping the game on ice, inching them closer and closer to something reasonable to work with entering the fourth quarter. And it wasn't just him. They have such tremendous defense with everybody buying in to the fucking system and starring in their fucking roles. Now again, Wembanyama is obviously going to be the anchor of such a stout defensive unit, but the way that Carter Bryant was playing in that game defensively as well, on both ends of the floor, just getting in everybody's grill, holding his own against damn Kawhi Leonard in the clutch. And that game started to trim down and down in terms of margin, to where you get within the last few minutes of this one, and it's just an all-out dogfight. Then you have Wembanyama in that time span proceeding to put up a three-pointer, missing a shot. They get back on defense, and he manages to contest this Kawhi Leonard three-pointer very well. Gets out in space, leaks out for possibly the easiest bucket of his life, and most certainly the easiest one that they've had in the past few games, with the way how some of these teams have opted to guard him. But that essentially won the game. And that's despite all the damn chaos that happened with free throws. but they won that game 116-112. No better game represents that in this time span than that. But it's not just the close matches. They beat the shit out of the 76ers and were up by as much as 48 fucking points in that game. Maybe even 49. And yes, Edgecombe went down in that game with a very rough injury as Carter Bryant was trying to contest one of his shots. But that was involuntary. That wasn't necessarily a dirty action. They continue to own Cade Cunningham when they faced off against him directly. Although this was a game that I didn't watch. Cade Cunningham had the 26 points, but he still shot 10 of 26 from the field. Not necessarily efficient. And once you get a hold on being able to limit him and what he can do for the offense, they don't have an answer outside of them. Especially with the guard play that the Spurs have as a collective. They rode a 5-game winning streak essentially with those 76ers, Pistons, and Clippers games. Then you get to them doing the same damn thing against the Rockets in another game that I watched on March 8th with them playing against each other. They just, after a while, put up way too much for the Rockets to handle. And that's the interesting thing about it. You could argue that the Spurs are somewhat similar to them. At least in the sense that traditionally, they'd have to focus on out-rebounding you, and they'd have to lean heavily on their defense to accomplish what it is that they're trying to do. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But you look at the Rockets as well, and they tend to struggle offensively. The Spurs themselves had that happen numerous points. I think they entered that Knicks game shooting relatively well from the 3-point line. And they have somewhat maintained that, but to this point still, as of the recording of this video, they're not necessarily the strongest team from the perimeter. When looking at this entire database here, they're somewhat middle of the pack. They shoot 35.8% from deep. Pretty much around where the Warriors are at on a little less volume as of the recording of this video. I just want to stress that heavily. But the Spurs, even with that in mind, will still have nights where they can just completely light you up from that range if you allow them to. The fact that they shot 52.5% from deep in this game against the Rockets and beat them 145-20, just completely outpaced them. They had no chance in this one. And that's not even to consider that I think in this game, they put up the most threes in a single game as a team that they've had in years. As you had Wembanyama get near a double-double with 29 points. You had Stephon Castle get 23. You had De'Aaron Fox get 20 and 10 in this game. And you also had Keldon Johnson put up 20 points off the bench. So they're able to play that well-rounded defensively. And they still have enough in the tank to where, hey, every now and then they're going to put up a stellar offensive night. They can beat you in blowout fashion. They can beat you in close, tightly contested games. And they can also say that they have been tested numerous times and find a way to keep themselves in virtually every match. That Knicks game was an aberration. Because for two of the last games here, you have them going up against a Tatum and Brown-led Celtics team and ultimately closing the deal as Wembanyama had 39 and 11 in that game himself. Now, it was definitely interesting, and I will say the complexion of it changed after a little bit with Jaylen Brown just going a little crazy. I ain't gonna lie. But that's not something the Spurs could necessarily be concerned with. I mean, even when you get into some of the interviews, that's essentially what some of their players are saying. It just makes them incredibly dangerous. Even if this is a fairly young team, You have the defense that you need to keep these scorching hot offenses at bay. And ultimately, while offense matters, that is going to be the key. You have to be able to get stops if you want to put yourself in the best possible position to win in April, May, and June, and so on. They have star-studded talent on their roster. Yes, it is a matter of experience and getting their feet wet in that setting. But they're not going to be bullied around and just completely ousted from playoff contention just because of that. And not to mention, in De'Aaron Fox, you essentially have your closer. This is the same man who was the clutch player of the year in 2023 for a reason. Like, they don't have the tools to succeed at all. Of course, they'll get got at times. I mean, this Nuggets game is the perfect example of that. Without Wembanyama, keep in mind, they still managed to take the Nuggets to damn near the brink. They were winning after the third quarter. And in this game, you had Stephon Castle put up a 30-point triple-double, I should say, with just 2 turnovers. And he shot 7 of 15 from the field, got to the line 13 times. That's pretty damn impressive. Facing off against a Nuggets team that is traditionally going to do everything in their power to try to outpace teams. The only downside to that is that they allowed the Nuggets to put up 42 points in the fourth quarter as Jokic just continued his domination. A fucking 31, 20, and 12 game. I'll get into the significance of that when I talk about the Nuggets in a short little while. Jamal Murray also had 39 points in that game. Tough way to allow them to come back, especially with the Spurs somewhat cratering in the fourth quarter. Like, to have 106 points and just settle for 25 in a game where the Nuggets ultimately find their way all the way back into it is definitely a rough stretch. But they did yesterday on a game that was on Prom, but I did not watch live. They beat the Hornets 115-102. They're currently the 2 seed in the Western Conference, so they're going to make the playoffs. It's not even anything up for debate at this point. From 3 onward, in terms of the seeding, everything else is so close in the Western Conference, but the Spurs are one of those 2 teams that just sit atop virtually everybody else. You could say there's still a little room for error that they're granted with having a 7-game advantage on the next best team. I'm also sure that they're not going to put themselves in a position to drop many more ball games, because they've been that consistent through pretty much the entire year. Talking about a drop-off, like, they're going to be fine. Yeah, the experience matters, but bro, y'all just gotta y'all gotta stop. Y'all have got to stop. But okay, we will progress into the Knicks and their side of things. As I mentioned in talking about that game, the way the Knicks came out was honestly a surprise. Now, again, it's been mentioned at several points that they've had one of the better defenses in the entire league since the turn of the new year. So, for a while, they've been sort of trying to buck the trend they had earlier in the year when it came to just their lackluster play on that side of the basketball. And for a stretch in this game, they definitely kept that kind of momentum going. The fact that, again, I literally get in there because I didn't even watch the first quarter of this game. I just get in there, I see them going on an absolute tear from the field like that. That's how you know you are doing everything right as a team. Pretty much everybody ate in this game. The thing with them has been consistency. Because while it was nice to see Mikal Bridges lead the team with 25 points, and while it's always good to see Karl-Anthony Towns put in a solid game, he has been one of the best rebounders in the league. But between his offensive fouls and the fact that for stretches of time, Jalen Brunson also went cold. This game is a little bit of an exception because he had 24 points. He shot 7 of 16 from the field. But that's what has made up the Knicks stretch in this time. It's been a little rocky for them. That's a dominant win. That's a statement win to have. Don't get me wrong. But at every other turn, everything else is up in the air. Because they then proceed to, go on a short spurt dominating the Raptors on March 3rd. One of the better teams in the Eastern Conference themselves that, honestly, you don't hear many people talking about. And I do find that pretty unfortunate because it's like the Raptors are actually performing pretty well. I don't think anybody expected it, but they deserve a lot of credit for it. They came into that game surging, and the Knicks were able to take that team down with even stronger defense than the Raptors possess. Jalen Brunson in this game shot 10 of 22 and had 26, while Karl-Anthony Towns had 21 points and 12 rebounds again. But then you just have a dip in production from most other players on this team. While that game is an okay one from Mikal Bridges, you could say that this is where the disappearing act started. Because once we get into this game against the Thunder, everything just gets a little murky here. Now, I did watch the tail end of this game and watch this in bits, in portions. The fact that the Knicks came back and nearly had a chance to win that game in and of itself against the damn great Thunder team is impressive. That should be considered in the overall conversation. But anytime you're shooting 28.6% from the three-point line as a team, it's going to be very difficult for you to compete. Then you had Mike Brown complaining about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander getting calls. And while that could be the case to an extent, you had Karl-Anthony Towns foul out of the game with 17 and 17. You had Landry Shamet in foul trouble off the bench as a guy who could potentially take the load off. So there might be some merit to that. But you also have to go out there and capitalize on some of those opportunities that you may get yourself. And once more, Mikal Bridges tailed off in production, Josh Hart tailed off in production, and Jalen Brunson started this struggle with a 5 of 18 bout and 16 points. Though he did have 15 assists, which is pretty cool. When you have all that going down combined and you can't stop a guy like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, while also having Chet Holmgren in the first half put up 23 points, and he proceeded to get injured later in the game. So, honestly, even with all those things being said, if Chet Holmgren was playing this full game, this probably could have been a lot worse for the Knicks. Now, they did bounce back in a very great way with a 39-point win against the Nuggets, limiting their offense completely in ways that we have rarely seen as a basketball collective of fans. It just rarely happened. Jamal Murray was not to be heard from, and they live with the notion of allowing Nikola Jokic to get his and force pretty much everyone else to beat them. They couldn't do it. OG Anunoby went crazy in this game. He had 34 points and 7 rebounds with 5 assists. Jalen Brunson had 15 assists again, and Karl-Anthony Towns had 17 and 13. It was more of a team effort with OG Anunoby spurring it. But once more, the signs were there that something was up with Jalen Brunson, because the shooting slump continued here with a 3 of 13 night. And that's before we get into their very much haunting LA trip. It was just not a great time. for the Knicks at all here. Especially when you look at this Lakers game that I watched last Sunday. Like, the fact that they allowed the Lakers, yes, the Lakers of all teams, to bottle them up. This was such a close game at halftime for some reason. And they severely limited, yes, the Lakers, limited exactly what the Knicks were trying to accomplish as a team. How was that even possible? How is that even possible? Ironically enough, the Knicks handed the Lakers one of their only losses on the year when it came to, their results after leading at halftime. So there was always an opportunity for them to get something going. But between allowing Austin Reeves and also Luka Doncic to just go blow for blow by themselves against this Knicks defense in isolation, at the three-point line, in the mid-range, in the restricted area, they were getting their way. And it blew this game wide open for them. Now, the Knicks themselves did get a hot start in that fourth quarter somewhat. But then, for a while, in one of the more hilarious sequences out there, both teams literally stagnated for minutes on end and could not get anything to go. The Knicks did what they had to do. They got this game down to single digits, I believe, and they still could not overcome the Lakers' defense, losing by 13 to them with a score of 110-97. Now, once more, Karl-Anthony Towns had 25 points and 16 rebounds, which could be considered good. But everybody else was just struggling mightily. Mikal Bridges, for what it's worth, literally did not score a single point in this game and had 6 rebounds with 5 assists. That consistency is something that the Knicks have to figure out. Now, they may be on the right track after losing the second of those matches to the Clippers in tough fashion, with Karl-Anthony Towns putting up 35 in that one. But they did log back-to-back wins against both the Jazz and the Pacers, bottom feeders of the NBA at this point of time. Although the Jazz, knowing them, most certainly want to be in the Pacers. They have their reason for that, with Tyrese Halliburton being out. Still, if they don't get that together, and that's despite Karl-Anthony Towns retaining the most double-doubles in the league, in that particular game, he got to 45 against the Lakers. Even if that's the case, with him especially, because for all of that you're contributing on that end, you're still proving to be a liability on defense, and you're just making all of these awkward moves on the offensive end that lead to dumb fouls, that leave your playing time in question. And come time for clutch moments, they have to reconsider playing you. It's just, that's not a good spot to be in. Now, they're still the third seed in the Eastern Conference, but man, if they aren't careful, because some of these other teams, especially when you look at the Cavs, man, they're catching up to them. They're a half game behind as of the recording of this video. So they have to stop playing around, because it's not going to be fun. Moving on to the Nuggets now, though. They themselves have started to figure it out, but it wasn't after a complete and total, man. Yeah, it has not been great for the Nuggets. Quite simply, from a team that had been managing just fine without Jokic and doing relatively well to keep their balance and keep their high seed in the Western Conference, that has changed tremendously. I think it was after the Timberwolves game that I watched with them. It had mentioned that the Nuggets, at that particular point in time, they were 6-9 in their last 15 games with just a single win against an above 500 team. And they also, at that point, had the toughest remaining schedule moving forward. That's a drastic slot for them to have. And yes, Jokic is still trying to get reaccustomed to playing. Yes, they were losing several guys at that time. Cameron Johnson hadn't returned yet. Aaron Gordon was on his way back but hadn't returned yet. They were losing core players. There's nothing wrong with that happening. But this slide has just continued for them. For another team that's had a rocky start of sorts, they're at an even split in record right now. And with that in mind, you enter this 6-9 in your last 15. So you're pretty much now at about 10-13 in your last 23. As you are now at your 68th ball game coming up. Yeah, that's just not the greatest of looks. I think the most revealing thing about that, besides the fact that, the Timberwolves, once again, like that Timberwolves game, watching it the whole way, seeing what it was that Jokic had to encounter throughout this time, despite having 35, 13, and 9. And also in this game, you had Jamal Murray put up 25 points and 5 rebounds himself on 9 of 22 shooting. And this game reminded me exactly of that Game 7 that closed out the 2024 Western Conference semifinals match against these two teams. Well, with these two teams in play against each other that sent the Timberwolves to the conference finals. As a result, it reminded me exactly of that. Now, the Nuggets did not have themselves such a large lead in this game, and they lost whatever they did retain rather early. But even with those two playing at their absolute best, there was absolutely no one else who could rise to the occasion and increase their level of play to match the moment. No one else could do it. It felt like after a while, the Timberwolves had all the control in this game. Like, you have those two doing what they have to do, and even Christian Braun had himself like 12 points in the first quarter, then just put on a disappearing act for the rest of the game. Cam Johnson did not contribute a single point in this game and had 4 rebounds and 3 assists. Those kinds of things can't happen, especially against a team like the Timberwolves. And that's with them not even having to rely too greatly on Anthony Edwards going off. It was guys like Bones Holland changing the pace up off the bench. It was guys like Jalen McDaniels, Naz Reid getting it done for the Timberwolves. Not necessarily him, and they still couldn't overcome it when it mattered the most. Because by that point, well, Anthony Edwards got all the help he needed. He started to rise up late, and by that point, it was over. It was done. It's been unconvincing. Even their wins, when you think about it, have not been looking to be the greatest out there. I mean, yes, Jamal Murray went off for a 40 ball. But you had to rely on some late game free throws to beat the damn Jazz? And they only won that game by 3. The Rockets game was probably the best one that they had overall, with Jamal Murray getting 30 points and Jokic also having 12 rebounds and 13 assists in this damn game, along with 16 points, while once more proving that the Rockets as well have their own things to work on. I believe this was another game that I watched live. Let me see. Because this was on March 11th. Yeah, this should have been the other Wednesday game. So, like, that was fair. That was reasonably well played by them. All you had to say about this one is that it all came down to the fundamentals for them. I will say I was impressed with the Nuggets defense in that game. But at the same time, we'll get to the Rockets side of this particular matchup because this shit was absolutely embarrassing. But yeah, the Nuggets dominated them in terms of overall pace. Like, literally, as I said in my notes for this, like, they could not keep up with some of these passes at all. It wasn't even just Jokic doing what Jokic typically does. The lead passes, the turnovers that they were generating were legitimately sinking the Rockets further and further into the potential for a loss. And they won that game, the Nuggets, by 36. Jokic became the first Nugget all time with 5 points, rebounds, steals, and assists in a single half. And he just retained reasonable play against this Rockets team. He is only one of 2 players, along with Larry Bird, to average 20, 10, and 5 against the Rockets all time. So there was no doubt left in this one. And then you get into the fact that, again, I already mentioned how impressive it was for the Spurs, but you could say that this was more revealing in the fact that the Nuggets are heavily flawed. Because even with them being able to somewhat last well without Jokic on the court, they are still commanding him to do so much for this team and mask up every single error that they believe they have and hope and pray that they can win ball games. And once more, that's, Jokic is that kind of player. That's also not a comfortable place to reside. And that is proven when you undergo a game like you had against the Knicks that I mentioned already. They typically own the damn Lakers. And they did win their first one on March 5th, but oh my goodness. Just think about this for a second. In 2 of their last 4 ball games, sandwiched in between, you have those wins sandwiched in between the fact that in these games against the Thunder and the second match against the Lakers in this time span just yesterday night, they allowed game winners by MVP candidates. It was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander taking the assignment on Christian Braun, shaking him and baking him, stepping back for a mean 3-point shot. He loaded up the cannon and banged it in for the game in that one. And they lost by 3. You have Luka Doncic getting near the elbow, driving into the baseline when I think it was the left side of the court. And he cashes in a mid-range shot to give the Lakers the 127-125 win in overtime. And I guess you could say this has been an issue for the Nuggets generally for a while. You can't outscore everybody. The league is oozing with talent and offensive firepower. You cannot rely on outscoring everyone every single game. You have to be able to offer up some resistance at some point. And it seems like they just cannot do it consistently enough when it matters. Like, it's pretty damn revealing for the Jazz, knowing how bad they can be defensively. You are still somewhat in this stretch of time with the way you've been playing, rivaling them. Like, they're the 21st worst defense in terms of points per. And the Jazz are dead last. Like, it's got to balance out somewhere. The Nuggets may never get to a point where they're going to be world beaters defensively. But at the very least, level that shit out into the top 15, top 13 of the NBA, and you might be good. You can't live with a bottom 10, I should say, defense. Even if your offense is that damn good. Because living that way, believing that you can survive that way, is exactly how the Nuggets go from winning the title in 2023 to not reaching that level of success again. Consistently being second round exit over and over again. Now again, if they continue to get healthy, if they continue to get on the right track, they might be okay. But even at their healthiest, to this point, you get a game winner put on your head. So that is definitely not a good sign at all. Alright, let me move on to the Timberwolves and talk about them in this time span. As I mentioned, they played against the Nuggets and beat them in a similar ilk to the way that they got them out of the playoffs in 2024. They also faced off in this time span against the Lakers and I only watched them face off against the Nuggets and the Lakers. So that's a little tough. But to look at them overall, they've been okay. 4-3 in this time span. That's okay. That's modest. But they've now overtaken the Nuggets for the 5 seed. Now, winning a matchup like that to start out the month is something that if they continue to do it enough, it could hold as a tiebreaker if this continues to come down to the wire. So they're in a really good position right now. But I will say that with this stretch of games in between their matches against the Nuggets and their most recent one against the Warriors, before they play the Thunder in just a few short minutes, actually, as of this recording, one could question what some of these other games have looked like. I'm not even going to lie. Because, yes, the Grizzlies did end up losing this game. They actually held a lead in this for quite some time. You can be impressed with Anthony Edwards putting up 41 and also 5 steals, along with Julius Randle having 23 points and 11 rebounds. But I do question that a lot. The Grizzlies themselves have been one of the worst teams in the league. And they don't even really have any star talent playing. They fielded... Well, I'm not going to say that. That might be crazy. I'm not going to say that. But clearly the Grizzlies are in a different direction. If you're telling me they're starting all of Scottie Pippen Jr., Ty Jerome, Jalen Wells, Gigi Jackson II, and Olivier Mazons Prosper. They didn't even field a true big man in this game. And they still nearly found a way to win this. Now, they dominated the glass, the Timberwolves, and in a 7-point ball game, to have an advantage of 19 overall in rebounds and 8 in offensive rebounds is going to matter a ton. But let things have gone a little differently. They did get a nice win against the Raptors on March 5th, but then they proceeded to have a 3-game losing streak. All of them double-digit losses, and a pair of them by more than 25 points. They allowed the Magic to hold them under 100 points. One of their worst outputs of the season as a team. on March 7th, as the Magic won 119-92. Paolo Banchero had 25 and 15 in this game, along with them allowing Desmond Bane to put up 30. Yeah, Anthony Edwards had 34 points, but that can only do so much for you when Jaden McDaniels and Dante DiVincenzo combine for 3 points in 58 total minutes played. And Dante DiVincenzo, for the record, did not score a damn thing. What the hell is going on with that picture? The Lakers one could make a little more sense, and considering just how severely they limited Anthony Edwards' impact, which is how playoff teams are going to play him. It's why the Thunder, for example, were that successful in being able to take down the Timberwolves in that series. It's because when that going gets hard, when they're forcing Anthony Edwards to move that ball out of his hands, there has not been enough shown from everybody else to ball handle at such an effective rate that can truly make the defense respect them as players. There hasn't been enough of that to where teams are threatened by it. They are more than content with it. And this game proved it. I mean, he still shot the team high in terms of attempts. But when you look at this and you see 2 of 15, 1 of 10, and 9 of 10 splits from the field, the three-point line, and the free throw line, all that feels forced after a while. And I watched that game too. And for whatever reason, the Timberwolves continue to allow Austin Reeves to dominate. He fucking dominated them in this game. Straight up. And to consistently allow that to happen gets embarrassing after a while. I mean, it's cool to see that Julius Randle entered this with the most converted and ones in the NBA, but then you also are just allowing Austin Reeves to go on a third quarter tear where this nigga not only put up 16 points in the third quarter after struggling in the first half, throughout the rest of the game, he got 2 and 1s from the three-point line himself, furthering his status as a player who has the most converted three-point and 1s in the NBA this season, for the most random metric out there. This Timberwolves defense that wants to play as gritty as possible, especially come playoff time, is getting belted like that right now towards the tail end of the season, while Luka Doncic also flanked them with a 31-point triple-double himself. And at that point, we understand that Anthony Edwards is going to want to guard the best player out there. But can nobody else hold their own against those two? Why is everybody else all of a sudden just an absolute mismatch against guards? Like, that's not a great look. I think the most revealing thing as well from that game is that while you have to credit him with this, how are we in a game with DeAndre Ayton and Rudy Gobert matching up against each other, and Ayton played so damn well that he made fucking Gobert look inferior? Wait, are we serious right now? That's a terrible look, to say the least. And then they lost by fucking 25 and gave up 153 points, which I'd imagine is a season worst for them defensively against the Clippers. Like, what the fuck is happening? And yeah, they get that win against the Warriors. Of course, not many people like Steph Curry, Draymond Green. Those guys were out of that game. But at that point, with the way that this has been looking, the Timberwolves would absolutely take that. Now, we'll see how it is when they play the Thunder in a little bit. If I get done with this at a reasonable point in time, I might be able to watch some of that game. So we'll definitely see how that goes. They say Anthony Edwards is healthy for it as well. So it could be interesting. That game has been a show. And hey, that was one of the seminal wins for the Timberwolves earlier in the year. Being one of those teams that were able to handle the Thunder and handle them well as they were undergoing this massive tear, trying to catch the damn 2016 Warriors. Hopefully they can get a repeat of that, I guess. Hopefully. Okay, let me see. What team is next for me? Okay. Moving on to the Celtics. Yeah, that man, Jason Tatum, after all the rumors, after all the promotional, series-style videos about it, he is back, and he is playing relatively well for them. Relatively. Now, not everything has been clean. You get in those first couple games between the Mavs and the Cavs, and he didn't shoot the best from the field overall, but he more than pitched in his part to help them win both of those games back-to-back. A 20-point blowout against the Mavericks that I did watch live, and a game against the Cavs where Donovan Mitchell continues to dominate this team. Still managed to come out with a win late in this particular game. Before that, though, they did face off against the 76ers and also managed to get a win against them on March 1st by 16. With Jaylen Brown, continuing to, for that time, hold down the fort. The man is an MVP caliber player this season. And he has more than put that on display even when Jason Tatum has come back. It's been interesting to see that dynamic. Because the conversation had been, okay, if he comes back, he's going to ruin the chemistry of the team. Dumbest fucking shit I've ever heard in my life. Dumbest shit I've ever heard. It's possible, especially if, Tatum was going to be the kind of player who says, okay, I'm back now, I'm going to take majority of the shots again. You're going to have to defer to me now. No, it doesn't seem like that's the approach that he's taking. In fact, I could say that this is kind of how Jaylen Brown managed to get the Finals MVP nod in the first place. How many games did you see throughout that postseason run where it would be Jason Tatum being the complementary piece, the defensive ace, the playmaker? He could get his own buckets if he needed to, but being able to set the tone on that side of the ball is what made life easier for that Celtics team and ultimately allowed them to get the gentleman's sweep against the Mavericks in the way that they did in the 2024 Finals. And you're seeing elements of that in these most recent games. Now, again, as I mentioned with the Spurs match, this is a situation where I'm like, if you are Jason Tatum in this situation, it's tough for you to go through a game like that, recognizing it's your third game back against a player like Victor Wembanyama and the Spurs team, and you have to now go out there solo because Jaylen Brown, oh my goodness, wanted to crash out on one of the damn refs for a no call, where he thought he was shoved, and maybe he was to an extent when you play it, when you slow it down, zoom it in, he did get shoved a little bit. There was a little bit of embellishment on his end too. Nevertheless, he didn't take kindly to the call, and he started to try to punch the shit out of this man. He was trying to press him. He got ejected from that game. Now, they did their best to hang in there, and the game was within, like, single digits. But in this season, like, it's Jaylen Brown that's going to be the leading force. They knew that they needed him out there, and everything else faltered once he left that game. It didn't get any easier, as they then had to face off against the Thunder and proceeded to lose by 2 points as well, despite Jaylen Brown putting up 34 points of his own. But they did round it out well, getting a win, an easy win, against the Wizards. And, I mean, you already know what that ties into. I will get into my perspective of that as a development later on, because I don't want to do that right now and take away anything from any of the teams. But also, with that being as historical as it was, it's not something that I'm going to gloss over. Like, it's going to be addressed in my own way. It's been talked about enough, but that's not something I can leave out of a video like this. It just can't happen. Like, you already know what time it is there. Let me see. Yeah, I guess we can look into it from the 76ers perspective. Alright, let me get there. They are tied for the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference as of the recording of this video. And you figure it's going to be tough for them. One of the recent things I had seen from Shams Charania is that per a post, Tyrese Maxey had a tendon injury in his pinky finger, and he was going to be reevaluated in 3 weeks, as of that report. So with him being out for these last few games, at the very least, everything after March 7th, it looks like, it's going to start to get a little bit shaky for the 76ers at that point. And you can understand that. The signs were there even when Tyrese Maxey was healthy and ready to go. Even when VJ Edgecombe was healthy and ready to go. And it all stems back to the fact that they, as a team, for years now, consistently find ways to lose when Joel Embiid is not in the lineup. Personally, I don't have a problem with Joel Embiid not playing in this situation if he truly isn't healthy. Because what he was showing you before he got re-injured, it looked promising. Like, as I said then and as I still think now, he was moving in such a fluid way for the first time in years. Literally years since he'd been moving like that. In that kind of fashion. And if there is a way for you to conserve him and to make sure that he is healthy for when you actually need him to go out there and play, I'm all for it. Because you cannot risk that version of Joel Embiid getting hurt or having a setback in at this time. But it always puts this team in a very interesting spot. Because typically they have a losing record when he's not on the court. It was something that derailed their 2024 season with him being unavailable. And clearly with what happened last year with everybody being out, from Joel Embiid to Paul George, who they're still missing as a part of this suspension as well. They are trying to find pieces to supplement that, right? You have Andre Drummond trying to come in and be the glass-eating monster that he was in Detroit, but still managed to lose that battle and lose it mightily in that Celtics game, which is what ultimately caused them to lose overall. I don't care what team you have around you, you're not going to find many people that can stop what it is the Spurs do. At the same time, this is a man in Joel Embiid who put up 70 points on the Spurs team. It's a massive loss to suffer. One of their highlight wins would come against the Jazz, but it's revealing. All three of their wins this month have come against teams that are just not great and are far below 500. Jazz are one of the worst teams in the league. Nets are one of the worst teams in the league. And the Grizzlies are 23-41, or were 23-41 at this point of time, with very little room to be able to get back to 500. They're not that far away from clinching a losing season. Meanwhile, although I haven't, the Celtics and Spurs games aside here, I hadn't watched a lot of 76ers action overall. But the fact that every single one of their losses, and yes, you can take injuries into account, you can take the strength of some of the other teams into account. Like, there's a balance in this thing overall. But all of their losses in this month have come against teams that are above 500. And in fact, some of the best in the league overall. I don't know if that truly bodes well for them right now. But when they are healthy, the 76ers are still a team that is incredibly dangerous and should be accounted for. You can't push them to the side and act like they're just going to go down easy. No, they're going to compete. They just have to be able to get themselves in that spot and prove it. As long as they maintain relatively well, they should be fine. There's a chance for them to get Tyrese Maxey back. Paul George, I'm sure that suspension is wrapping up very soon. And they are like 8.5 games, I should say, above the 11 seed Bucks right now. So they might be a solidified play-in team. They could still sneak into a true playoff spot, depending on how the Raptors and the Heat continue to perform over the stretch of the season, as of the recording of this video. But, hey, they better be careful. That's all I'm really going to say about that one. They better be careful. You do not want to suffer some shit like that. I'll briefly address the Suns and the Kings because that was one of the games that I did watch, though wasn't really worried about taking too many notes on it all. The Suns and the Kings collectively are at about the same points that they were. Kings are flat out the worst team in the Western Conference. And the Suns, despite having Dillon Brooks being out for all this time and apparently getting himself in a DUI situation that was later found out to be him maybe having weed in his car, he is a large piece of what they're trying to accomplish, but Jalen Green has been able to come in along with Devin Booker holding down the fort, and they've done just fine. They won that direct matchup against the Kings. They are 5-2 in this month overall, and it looks like Jalen Green is on his right path back to some form of pretty good play. It can't be helped that he started out his tenure being hampered with injuries like that. That's always tough. But it seems like he's on the right way back. And that's definitely promising to see if you are a Phoenix fan. Hell, you want to see it. You recognize you gave up KD and other capital for this man. So you'd like to see him go out there and compete along with Dillon Brooks and Devin Booker to maximize on that investment in the best way that you can. As for the Kings, somehow, someway, they're 3-4 this month, but they're still not a team to be taken seriously. We know exactly where they are headed as a ball club. It still doesn't mean that they are just willing to, at least in theory, they aren't willing to bow down, right? The way that Massim Renault and Dylan Cardwell have been playing for them is excellent, to say the least. And, for a team that's trying to look for their next step forward, to look for their next young guy to build around, to have those two in the backcourt together is not half bad at all. Not half bad at all. Just not enough to really make too much noise right now. That's the only thing that is really hurting them at this point of time. Okay, let me see some. Oh yeah, I should have touched on that point already. Damn. Right, Nikola Jokic has now reached, I should say, 10, 30, 20, and 10 ball games in his NBA career. And that was done in that same Spurs game, I believe. So that's kind of... that's kind of tough, bro. That's kind of tough. Alright, moving on to the Hawks. Let me get there. Because they, with Onyeka Okongwu and Jalen Johnson, just completely laying the hammer down on this Bucks team. They won this head-to-head, and there was virtually no competition for it. Jalen Johnson continued to, put together a season for the ages for him, from his perspective. His 20-10-7 mark at that game made him the 5th in NBA history to reach those numbers throughout a season. And at that point, Robertson, Jokic, Westbrook, and Chamberlain had accomplished that feat multiple times. He was on great pace to do so. Just truly such a tremendous jump for him. I'm loving every second of that. The Hawks to this point, because that was the only game I watched from them. That was the only game that was really live. Unfortunately, you gotta blame the league for that one. They are undefeated this month, so that's a good sign. They've got a nice blend of, wins here. They did get a strong one against the 76ers most recently to try to, close the gap, and eventually they overtook them. They're the 8th seed. Tied for it at this point. That head-to-head will matter. That's why they are holding it outright when you look at the different rankings. They were able to beat the Bucks again by 23 points yesterday, with CJ McCollum actually taking on more of the responsibility and Jalen Johnson continuing to do Jalen Johnson things. So that's definitely tremendous to see. As for these Bucks, man, I already mentioned they're 27-39, the 11th seed in the Eastern Conference. They are on a 4-game losing streak. Wow. Just wow. And started off with them losing to the Magic by 39 losing to the Suns by 15, despite Kyle Kuzma putting up 33 just because. Losing by 7 to the Heat, and then also, as I mentioned, just recently, 23 yesterday to the damn Hawks. But this is the mark of a team that will do everything in its power to keep Giannis Antetokounmpo on their roster. This is not looking so convincing at this point of time. I'm just not exactly sure what the Bucks are looking for in this situation. Like, what exactly is it that you are trying to do? Because whatever it is, you have to scrap it. It isn't working. It isn't working at this point. Like, you absolutely need some help, dude. Because there's just no way that you get away with doing some shit like that. It's crazy. Moving on to the Mavericks. So, recently for them, they did get Cooper Flagg back. It's been a little rusty. Like, he hadn't played since before the All-Star break. And he'd been riding a tremendous amount of momentum, looking primed for a Rookie of the Year award win, alongside maybe Con Neupel this season. Well, it's kind of tailed off for him since then. Even when you take this game against the Celtics into account, and I believe that this was the only one that I watched live from them, it's definitely unfortunate, but it still takes more than one player, and they just generally have not had the answer as a team. I mean, a lot of these games are just unconvincing. Anybody's going to struggle against the Thunder. That's fair. But then you lose by 27 to the Hornets after we recently got that game between Flagg and Neupel with them dueling it out. Like, okay. They lost by 1 against the Magic, which might be fair. Aforementioned 20-point loss to the Celtics. And then 30 to the Raptors on March 8th. Before dropping this next one to the Hawks for what would be a 6-game losing streak at that point. Though, ironically enough, the thing that ended it was Chris Middleton turning back the clock and going for 35 points to lead them against the Grizzlies with a final score of 120 to 112, which made absolutely no sense. He did all of this off the bench, and he only passed one fucking time for an assist in 25 minutes of play. Who would have seen that coming from Chris Middleton at all? Man shot 10 of 17 from the field, hit 8 threes, so okay, you're thinking, they might be on the right track now. Then you consider that this is the Grizzlies we're talking about, and they proceeded to get curb stomped by the Cavs by 33 points, who they will be facing off against once more today at 3:30. Hopefully they fare a lot better, and I mean a lot better than that, because oh my goodness, like they keep that shit up, man. Oh my goodness, it's not. No. Okay. Moving on to the Clippers, and honestly, I'll be fair about this. Man, if you happen to be a Clippers fan, clap it up. Clap it up, because you guys just did something that felt virtually improbable. Like, the way in which this team started out the year, for them to go 6-21 through their first 27 games. Just think about that. This team was 6-21 in their first 27, far below 500. And they managed just recently, with, I think, the win that clinched it, ironically enough, might have very well been this matchup against the Timberwolves, if I'm not mistaken. It was either the Knicks or the Timberwolves game. They managed to get above 500 in the exact same season. The very first time that has happened in NBA history. And this is with them taking on a completely different role. After losing Ivica Zubac, after losing James Harden, because those guys believed, especially Harden, it might have been about money, but there might have been a thought as well that this team couldn't effectively turn it all the way around, and even if they did, can they really be trusted in the playoffs? Those might be legitimate questions. But they got there. They're the 8th seed in the Western Conference. They're sitting at 34-33 as of the recording in this video after a shocking loss to the Kings, to say the least, given everything else that they've been able to do. But man, that is what stands out above all the rest. It's just interesting to see something like that go down. Now, the only game that I watched from them in this time was that aforementioned game against the Spurs. And, I mean, you can say that them being up by 25 points and losing it is revealing. I think that kind of mentality is truly, at least with everything else that they were doing in this game, it was pretty identical to what it was they've been trying to do all season long. When Kawhi Leonard is healthy, he is a fucking robot. To that point, he had 40 consecutive 20-point games, which was tied for the most by a player at the age of 30 or older with John Havlicek in that same time span. And all Kawhi Leonard has done since then is blitz right past it, because he's had games of 28, 29, 45, 28, and 31 in the last 5, to far exceed that record and have the most prolific, in a way, scoring season. I'm not going to say the most prolific scoring season, but by this specific metric, his 45 20-point games, that model of consistency is something that players at the age of 30 or older typically don't do and hadn't done since John Havlicek. Just broke that shit. Like it was nothing. There's something to be said about that. Truly. And it's not like all these wins have just been, you had it. You had it. They were up on 25 against one of the best teams in the NBA in the Spurs. They beat the hell out of the Knicks. They beat the hell out of the Timberwolves. And they beat the Warriors on a back-to-back after blowing the shit out of the Pelicans. So, while again, they have truly done well this month, the downside to that is you are asking Kawhi Leonard to essentially take you back to 2019, prime of his career, Kawhi Leonard, being the lone star, pretty much, on the team, and going out to finally accomplish something of worth in the playoffs and win a title. There's still questions surrounding that, and a lot of them do stem from his lack of availability and potential injuries flaring up at the wrong time, at the wrong moment for them, in his attempt to replicate that. This is very difficult. Like, you're looking at all these games, he is the leading scorer in every single one. And can anybody step up? Can anybody truly assist him in that way? You'd think that they would be able to, and that's starting to begin. They recently got Darius Garland healthy. And he's doing a fairly nice job of facilitating the basketball when he's been in. Benedict Mathurin has also continued to give them a good scoring punch off the bench when he's hitting his shots. The Clippers are right in the mix, though. And from them, saying that, hey, we're trying to ensure that you guys do not grant the Thunder the opportunity to get a top 3 pick in the NBA draft, we've moved on from that conversation to them being potential playoff contenders. That is an interesting turn of events to have in less than a full season of work. Like, it's truly impressive to see something like that go down. So that deserves all the credit in the world. Moving on to the Cavs, as I mentioned, they are 41-26 at this point. They're absolutely trying their hardest to catch up to the Knicks right now. But with them dropping this match against the Celtics by 11, it would not get off to the greatest of starts for them. The main thing with that was, well, okay, Donovan Mitchell is going to traditionally do everything he can to light this team up. But they were just anemic at the worst possible moments. On the one end, as I'm noted in this game, they shot 2 of 22 from deep in the first half. 2 of 22. You ain't winning a game like that. You're not. And that's not even getting into how they closed the fourth quarter. Now, again, they were trying to stick with it. They were trying to. But they just stagnated mightily in the last 2 minutes of the ballgame offensively. Those are just a combination of things that you cannot have happen in a situation like that. And that's even with Harden having 19 points, 10 assists, and no turnovers. That's even with Evan Mobley getting his back to the basket and making some very rugged plays for 24 points in 10 of 19 shooting. Like, not completely half bad, but man, you have got to bring so much more than that to the table. Or otherwise, you're just going to continue to get punked. The Cavs would also face off, let me see. Yeah, they faced off against the Magic in this. And this just, from the Magic's perspective, I should say, it's good. But you're telling me that the Cavs allowed a man in Desmond Bane who had been struggling to be efficient for most of the season. This man could not be touched in this game. He couldn't be touched. He went the fuck off. And the Cavs had no answer for it whatsoever. You can appreciate Evan Mobley continuing to get physical. And also, Keon Ellis, in that stretch where the Cavs were down by a lot, trailing in the fourth quarter, trying to come back, Keon Ellis and some of his buckets, along with James Harden in his 30 points, got them back into this game, made it very interesting down the stretch, and got it within at least a couple possessions. But with allowing Bane to do that, they lost this game 128 to 122 themselves. Donovan Mitchell shot 9 of 24 from the damn field in this game, which also didn't help them. And overall, like, they had a good amount of advantages in most places. They just could not. Could not generate fouls to the same level. But at the very least, after that March 11th game, they were able to win against the Mavericks by 33. and one of their cleaner wins, quite frankly, in this month. It had been on the up and up since James Harden had got there. And at times, they've retained that. But in the same sense, they kind of met their match a little bit. They're still in it, though. But they are also another team where it's like they're going to have to, get some of these fatal flaws fixed. And that's kind of been the theme surrounding pretty much every team at the top of the Eastern Conference. The fact that no one team really sticks out. All these teams have more than 40 wins, and even the Magic sit at 38 and 28, and yet they've all got something that just makes them a complete question mark come playoff time. It's tough to see some shit like that, but man. Alright, let me see. Let's get on to the Rockets now. Now, as I'd mentioned, for them, they did go out pretty rough to the Spurs on March 8th last Sunday. And I did watch that one. In fact, they've gotten some pretty fair wins, if I do say so myself. And also, compared to the Nuggets, they, even with that loss, are still currently the 4 seed in the Western Conference. It's close, but they're still up there. So they can at least say that for themselves. But man, when they are truly out of rhythm, it absolutely looks bad. To this point, yes, it's true that the Rockets might not have a legitimate point guard at the moment. Even with Reed Shepherd being able to do what he does off the bench at times. Like this Warriors game, for example, where he had 30 points. While that can be the case for them, they still struggle to shoot from 3. They still struggle. Look no further than the Spurs game and this Nuggets game. Both of them combined. Especially this Nuggets game. I'm going to get to it because it's preposterous how you can field an NBA team and struggle to that extent. To get into the Spurs match, yes, they lost by 25 points while having more free throws, but they also shot 8 of 28 from the three-point line in this game. You have Kevin Durant being a lethal scorer. You have Alperen Sengun being a lethal scorer. And even Amen Thompson, at times, can be a lethal scorer. But outside of Kevin Durant, outside of him being pretty much the best three-point shooter they have, everybody else is limited. Alperen Sengun is normally going to operate from the paint and can't really do it elsewhere. And they continue to dare. There were multiple times in both of these matches specifically, they're just daring Amen Thompson to shoot. Now, his athleticism at times, especially in the Nuggets game, allowed him to get out in transition and get some athletic finishes over people. But once he has to face off against a defense that knows where he's at all times and is still willing to deny him the opportunity to make an impact, give him all the space in the world to shoot, won't allow him to, because you're not going to do anything else, and we know you're not going to make it, and turn around, he doesn't. And then what for this Rockets team? Even in this game, there were some points where they were able to get their own rebound, but with not having Steven Adams in the lineup, with him being out due to injury, having that secondary rebounder and that twin tower unit not being able to be deployed at this point, it also put the Rockets in a little bit of a bind here. They still won the rebounding battle, but at what cost? If you're going to secure these offensive boards and you're not going to capitalize on that shot attempt. With a make, it doesn't even really matter at this point what you do. It just doesn't. And then this Nuggets game. Because these were the main two games that I watched from the Rockets as it was. And again, they send the overall message here that you have to consider when thinking about this team during this time. In a similar way to how the Celtics were playing against the Nuggets. This was dead ball era basketball. This truly was. And you have to give them credit. Yes, Jokic was doing all of this in the first half. He also had 5 turnovers. They were keeping this battle relatively even. They were able to force the Nuggets to make mistakes. But they themselves also could not protect the ball to save their fucking lives. And it made for really sloppy output of basketball for this time. Then it just proceeded to get worse and worse. Because not only did they continue to outpace the Nuggets, continue to outpace the Rockets, they had to settle into desperation mode. Because with what I tracked down, you see how limited the Rockets are as a team. And then you put these numbers into perspective and it blows your mind. With what I had down initially, because I stopped taking notes after a while with how this game was getting. It was mentioned that the Rockets, dead ass, shot 4 of 25 from shots outside of the restricted area of the floor. I'm talking mid-range. I'm talking 3-point shots. They did not convert on virtually anything from outside of the paint. They were dominating the points in the paint margin. But every single time they had to space out, they were allergic to even being average shooters from that range. They did not have it within them to activate any of that. And it had to have been even worse because I'm looking at this here and it says that they shot 4 of 33 from the 3-point line. And we're in garbage time and they're still shooting threes. And I'm like, stop fucking shooting. Just stop shooting. 4 of 33 from the 3-point line. How do you survive as a team shooting less than 16% from the 3-point line in the modern era of basketball? And they promptly got their ass kicked in this game. Because, newsflash, you don't. They buried themselves alive. We were literally nearing. They missed 22 consecutive shots. I'm dead. They missed damn near 20 consecutive shots. We were nearing the fucking 27 missed threes territory with the way they were jacking up brick after air ball from fucking outside the paint and the 3-point line. Even more angst for Rockets fans, they shot 5 of 14 from the free throw line. In this game, on the 11th. It's like at that point, how do you even recover from a game like that? Just how? It does not happen. The Rockets are a good enough team to contend. And they are still in a position where Kevin Durant entering a playoff series is going to be their closer. That has been the goal for them the entire time. And as long as he's available, they've got a fighting chance. But if you're going to shoot your own damn self out of ball games with that kind of atrocious display, how do you expect to advance far in the playoffs like that? It's what hurt them in the Warriors series last year. You cannot go on that kind of a shooting slump in just one game and expect to keep up with another basketball team. Now, again, they got a few quality wins in there, but those losses stick out like a sore thumb. Like, yes, they beat the Pelicans on Friday, okay? By 2. But, man, they have a whole bunch of work to do on their own end. Because shit like that is just embarrassing, bro. Like 4 of 33 from deep. There is no such thing as fucking April 33rd. There's no such thing. What the fuck are you shooting like that for? And again, you have the balls, even in desperation time, to still go out there and jack up 3-pointer after 3-pointer after 3-pointer. Have you no pride? Have you not already embarrassed yourself into oblivion? Like, come on, man. There is just no way. There's no way that some shit like that can happen. You just have to recalibrate pretty much every single thing in your game plan at that point. That is what it's going to take. I can tell you that right now. 'Cause, boy, that's some level of atrocious, man. I can't even lie to you, bro. My goodness. Alright. To move on to the Magic. They themselves are set to face off against the Hawks tomorrow, as of the recording of this video. The Magic, honestly, needed their fortunes to change just a little bit. Just a little bit. Hey, they are starting to play within their identity. Now, again, they have still struggled to shoot the ball themselves. But when it comes to them having this mentality to play fast and strong defense and get opportunities with mismatch upon mismatch, the Magic have executed that very well. In fact, after losing against the Pistons to open the month, they're quietly one of the hotter teams in the entire NBA, as they are on a 7-game win streak as of the recording of this video. And again, in a similar way, they are not beating just scrub teams. Although, yes, dominant wins against the Wizards and this current iteration of the Bucks might not really suggest a whole lot. But they have picked up wins against a 40-24 Timberwolves team, a 40-26 Cavs team, and yesterday a 38-30 Heat team, with a couple of those teams serving as direct competition. Now, it hasn't always looked that way for the Magic, especially when you look at one of the earlier matchups that they had against the Cavs. Oh, Donovan Mitchell was giving them that ass whooping. I know in that game, he had like 40 plus, if I'm not mistaken. He was taking it straight to him. And the Cavs saw that. They booked this game for March 11th. And they said, you know what? We can return the favor if we truly want to. And they more than did their own damage. Wendell Carter Jr. dealt some of that physicality back that Evan Mobley was showing. And, it was getting a little rough for the cover on Jared Allen's end. And I was interested to see what exactly that looked like. Like, it's definitely crazy to see something like that go down. But the physicality was getting, too wild. I really don't know how to explain Mo Wagner just getting his fucking jersey grabbed and ripped apart by Thomas Bryant, but I digress. Then the man had the nerve to try to fight the bench. I don't really understand that, but okay. Yeah, their efforts were definitely measured in this one, and they got, some valuable help with getting people in foul trouble early. Sam Merrill, for example, was already deeply in foul trouble, and so it made him even more ineffective on the defensive end, opening up looks for not only Desmond Bane, but also Tristan Da Silva, who's on a little bit of a recent tear. He put up 23 points in this game, literally just pump faking the hell out of the people on the 3-point line and getting into the paint for some easy layups and even a monster dunk he threw down in this game. And then, as I mentioned, Desmond Bane, his inefficient, short-armed ass put up 35 points on this damn team. And not only just that, on 12 of 19 shooting with 2 threes, but he also gave himself the second all-time place in 30-point games in their first season with Orlando. The only player to do that, and the only player in franchise history that has more in their first season, is Tracy fucking McGrady. Say what you want about him being in the Hall of Fame, but to compare prime Orlando Magic Tracy McGrady and be in the same playing field as that caliber of player, and this is Desmond Bane we're talking about, maybe he's finally starting to turn the narrative around. Maybe this contract, this trade, was worth it the whole time, and we just couldn't really fathom it being the case for a while. Gives you something to think about. Truly does. Now, it's continued for Da Silva to this point and the entire team at large. I mean, they did have to face off against the Wizards again, and they proceeded to put up 136 points on them. Who knew? But you also had them beat the Heat yesterday with Paolo Banchero putting up 27, 8, and 7. So it makes the rest of their next few games a little interesting. They will face off against the Hawks. They have the Hornets, and they have the Raptors again. They're just trying to do as best as they can to avoid the play-in. That's really what this comes down to. And I'm going to take a lot more stock into them being able to beat their Eastern Conference foes. Now, they do have some tough Western Conference matchups. They play the Thunder on a back-to-back. That could be fucking sneaky. You're not going to find many teams that can take down the Thunder, especially off of a back-to-back. But we will see. We'll see how that goes, I guess. All right, is that... Let me see. Okay. Well... Alright. That will do it for the games that I watched and the teams involved in the specific games that I watched. For now, though, there are a few developments to get into, and honestly, while there are some other ones that do need to be addressed, I already addressed the Maxey one, there are some others that need to be looked into. and are going to be given priority as a result of their significance. Firstly, elephant in the room. We've talked a lot, for some reason, about the Wizards, and we just talked about the Magic beating the Heat. Well, if you have there's honestly no way you aren't aware that Bam Adebayo did what he did last Tuesday against that same Wizards team. You could not have truly been living under a rock. And even if you don't know a look about basketball, you heard rumblings of Bam Adebayo putting up the second most points in NBA history against Washington with 83 points on 20 of 43 shooting, with 36 of 43 free throws made from the line, and with 7 3-pointers. I saw something mentioning that he became the first player in NBA history to put up at least 5 3-point makes and also 25 or more free throw makes. You couldn't escape the conversation because you've gotten the blend of people who are truly trying to give him praise for what he accomplished on the NBA court that night in Miami with his family watching, with A'ja Wilson watching courtside. And you have the other group of people, NBA players, pundits alike, just hating like fucking crazy on this man, Bam Adebayo, calling him the most aggressive free throw merchant, calling the game the most aggressive display of reckless basketball they've ever seen in their lives, laughing it off, especially the last few minutes of the game with the way that the Wizards went about engineering free throws, and same for the Heat. Oh, it was dishonorable. There was no reason Bam Adebayo should have even been in the game the way the Wizards had been getting their asses kicked by this Heat team. He already had 70. When is enough enough? There's no way. Kobe would never do something like that. As if, again, no disrespect to Kobe Bryant, it is an emotional moment to have something like that going down. And I think Gordon Hayward, again, they took one of his clips talking about that game out of context for some reason. But there is a point to be made that Kobe Bryant went 20 of 50 or 22 of 50, something along those lines, in his farewell game, playing it all the way through, recognizing that that was going to be his last one, and he got nothing but praise for that. But we're going to discredit Bam Adebayo and also disrespect Eric Spoelstra for having the balls and the true faith in his man to keep him in the game. Do you understand how many fucking times there have been players getting close to 60, 70 points, and just because we're up by like 30 plus, we're going to take you out, we're going to sit you down, and we're going to show respect for this great game. It's an unwritten rule to just all of a sudden bow down to the other team when they can't fucking stop the player in the first place. If you don't want Bam Adebayo in that situation to go chase the 80 points, don't allow Alex Saw to get torched in the first half to where that nigga had to get benched at halftime. Because in all reality, Alex Saw in that game played relatively well. And he has had a somewhat fine NBA season to this point. But the fact that with virtually no other big man available on that roster right now, we all know what's happening with Anthony Davis. This goes without saying. You are the tallest player on the court. I don't care how slim he may be. You are the de facto center on the team. even if he might be filling a forward position when Anthony Davis enters the lineup. We'll see how that works. Bam Adebayo is putting the ball on the floor and taking you to the rim over and over and over again. He dunked it on him. He laid him up at the cup with getting some additional leverage on him to the side. Bro, he was fucking crossing this nigga up. So you can't take away the last few minutes of that ball game and not recognize how crazy Bam Adebayo was getting out there. The man was going to work. Like, there is no reason to invalidate something like that. Just because, free throws. I understand the shit was looking crazy. Like, we're getting into some acting we've never seen before as we get into award season. In regards to, I think it was the Academy Awards or the Oscars or some shit taking place tonight. I mean, fair enough. But Bam Adebayo truly put himself in that upper echelon and deserves to get the credit for it. Like, you have to understand that Bam Adebayo, yes, we can continue to say, and even I can continue to say, nobody would expect Bam Adebayo. Nobody in a million fucking years would expect Bam Adebayo to put up 83 points, only trailing Wilt Chamberlain in overall output in a single game. Nobody would expect it. And if you ask these same people who approached his entire pre-draft process, they'd probably tell you the same thing. The man was more of a defensive-minded player entering the NBA. And you saw it happen throughout his first few seasons. He was built to be their defensive anchor and a small ball center. Never could he have envisioned getting himself into a situation like that. But with like different videos that I'd been watching from Microphone and from Jimmy Howroller covering this, for years he'd been challenging himself to go out there and contribute more offensively, more than he ever has before. And he'd been working at it. He'd increased his three-point output from some of the first few seasons of his career combined. He'd been challenging himself to expand his range, and he'd been challenging himself to become more of a ball handler. In this game, just proved to be the culmination of all of that hard work that we're not seeing behind the scenes. Even if you want to say that him being in the game for that long was a disgrace to the game, it also shows just how much work he had been putting in. To have that kind of energy to last for that much in an NBA game without really even breaking a sweat, really even getting that tired, is something that should also be respected. Incredible. Like, seriously. And also, even if you want to criticize Bam Adebayo for this, even if we want to take context into consideration, recognizing that Kobe Bryant was trailing in that game against the Raptors in which he had to put up the 81 points, well, the Heat in this game, you can give the teammates credit for being willing to defer to Bam Adebayo, with Davion Mitchell being the player that took the second most attempts with just 9 from the field. But they were missing Norman Powell, they were missing Andrew Wiggins, and they were missing Tyler Hero. It was the perfect storm. And when has any game that will see a player score that much, even some of the recent 70-point games, the Donovan Mitchell one, the Luka Doncic one, Damian Lillard, when have these games not consisted of you being at least the primary option on your team in that context, and also facing off against a team that isn't that fucking good? When has that not been the case? And now we're blowing it all out of proportion because someone actually decided to fully exploit this, fully tap into that, and accomplish the fucking job. Like, how are you going to blame him for that at that moment? That just doesn't make sense. It doesn't. It doesn't. Truly. I do not understand where the criticism, like, it's to that extent. It's to that extent. That's wild to me. Like, you're well inclined to have your opinion, but damn. Bam Adebayo is going to be the number one option in that situation. And he naturally did what the hell he had to do. You can't possibly blame him for something like that. From my perspective, I was an individual who was quite literally birthed just mere weeks after that 81-point game from Kobe Bryant on January 23rd of 2006. So I was not alive when this happened. But over the years, covering the NBA, hearing about it, you've had different people address this game and say that it could never be broken. That display of greatness offensively would never be replicated again. And over the past few years, in 2020, people have gotten close with the Doncic's and Lillards of the world nearing that output. With a guy like Stephen Curry getting 62 in 2020 and not having a chance to even really get beyond that. So from my perspective, it is quite literally the greatest scoring output that I could have possibly heard of in my time watching basketball. Simple as that. That's how I look at this. You can't take that shit away from the man just because you don't respect the way how he got the points. You can't do that. You just can't. Because it is something that he will look back on and be remembered for. That will not be forgotten by people. Truly. That's how I approach that situation. To just constantly have that overshadowed and disrespected to that extent is crazy. If you don't like it so much, you go out there and do it. And if you don't like it so much, tell the Wizards to stop being ass. Oh, and yeah. I mean, they're probably doing fine right now. But yeah, for a good few hours, in between hearing that the Max Crosby trade got revoked and having Bam Adebayo do that to a DC-based team, all on March 10th. Oh, I know you DMV-based fans, you Ravens and Wizards ones, especially, were going through fucking hell. If you were online, oh, I know people were coming after y'all. If you were in your own personal space with your people, I know they were coming after y'all. Because that is just something that you damn DMV-based fans will never forget. How is it that you go through something like that in a span of a couple hours of time? Trade Knicks for one of the best players in the NFL, and then having this shitty-ass team be on the receiving end of an 83-point game where one player accounted for the most free throw attempts and made 3 free throws in NBA history. And he broke Dwight Howard's 2 times record with 39 attempts. like, there may be some people who still aren't going to be heard from as a result of having that go down in that time span. But again, they got Trey Hendrickson. They'll be fine, right? So again, there is some warranted disdain for it, but to just completely dismiss the game like it didn't happen, like it don't count. Honestly, that shit is silly to me. Yeah, anybody saying, "Oh, this doesn't count," the numbers don't lie. They're already in the damn record book. It's already there. He's still trailing Wilt Chamberlain. It's not like he completely broke the overall record. Who the hell are you to say it don't count? Do you think Bam Adebayo gives a fuck about you not thinking that it counts? Who gives a fuck? It's you aren't in that position. You have no authority to say anything about anything. Like, shut the fuck up. Like, come on, bro. No. Nobody fucking cares. This is silly. And it's just unfortunate for a player in Bam Adebayo's situation. Consider this. Not only was his career high before this game at 41 points, and not only did he surpass that at halftime, so he was already on pace to have a monster night regardless of what the output was going to be, but it had literally been 5 whole years since he had a 40-point game, period. That was his only one. And more than 5 years later, he more than doubled his output for the second most prolific scoring game in NBA history. That is remarkable. Oh, and even better for people that want to say it doesn't count. His game score topped that of Karl Malone's at 60.5. For some poetic justice out there. So what exactly are we hating on? Because at that point, just, you have to focus that on the Wizards. And say, fuck Karl Malone too. Like, you're getting the best of two worlds here. What the fuck? What? Like, come on, man. You have to, bro. Y'all gotta stop hating, man. Like, Bam Adebayo deserves to be praised for that. It's not something you're gonna take away from him. And on a different note, about Wilt Chamberlain records that were in danger, how about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander just doing the inevitable and getting to his 127th straight 20-point game? The most in NBA history now, surpassing Wilt Chamberlain's 126. As he told you last season, his whole life is consistent. His whole life is consistent. Right? At the end of the day, that's really what this comes down to. Because if we're really going to continue doing this, what you have to understand about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, to think about just how much more Bam Adebayo deserves praise for something that was as improbable as this. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's career high is 55 points. He's never had a 60-point game. He's never had a 70-point game. And Bam Adebayo just lapped him in one night. But you don't want to give him credit for that at all? Now, again, context matters. We know who Shai is compared to who Bam Adebayo is. But you still gotta give the man his fucking credit, dude. And that's just what this comes down to with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as well. Oh no, he did this against the Celts. Yeah, he did this against the Celts on Saturday. Yep. Okay. So you have to give that some merit. As much as y'all want to shame Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for the acting tactics and the free throw merchant label, the man is consistently getting himself the buckets night in, night out, especially in the mid-range. He has also been a player who has now started to expand his game. The fact that he hit a three-point shot like that over Christian Braun in a year where he's started to take more three-pointers overall is pretty damn impressive, and something that I didn't anticipate Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was going to do. He'd been a killer in the mid-range and slashing to the rim. It had been his forte. He'd been leading the league in paint points as a guard, and leading the league in terms of drives to the rim and operation of possessions inside the three-point line over the past couple seasons. That's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's bread and butter. And he's still at that point, after sweeping award season, winning the MVP, winning the Western Conference Finals MVP, winning a Finals MVP. He's still saying, you know what, to become even greater as a player, I'm going to expand my range even further, test myself, see exactly where my limit is. And it's not like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is jacking up threes at a high volume, but he is shooting 38.3% from the field this season, or at least from beyond the three-point line. And to consider where he came from in terms of struggling with that throughout the first few years of his career, because frankly, as he started to become more of a star player with this team, he never really shot that well from range before. And yet, it's begun since last season. It's continued even further this year. All sorts of different ways to score. He can operate in the post. He can operate in the mid-range. He can take you on the baseline and rise up with a smooth shooting motion right over your head into a rainbow shot. He can do the three-point thing if he wants to. He's going to play at his pace. He's going to dictate the control of the game. You know this as an opponent, and you still can't stop him. And it's not like it's been easy for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander too. You go back to one of those earlier Rockets games, and he was saying, hey, he was close to losing it, and he knew it. But he retained it. He'd been dealing with injury for a while, and he still comes back, and what does he do? Like fucking clockwork. He's going to work. And he's getting buckets. And this is something that, quite frankly, as long as he's retaining that durability, he's honestly going to continue to score 20 balls. He's going to continue to do it. Like, I'm going to go out there and more than likely watch this game in a second. He's already at 4 points. Now, he's not shooting the best. And yet, somehow, some way, he's still going to figure it out. Even against this gritty Timberwolves defense, he will still find a way to come out with 20 points. Now, will they win? I don't know. I don't know if they're going to win. But damn it, they'll figure it out. Moving on to some other developments to round this out. Nikola Vucevic would suffer a fractured right ring finger, and he's going to miss at least the next few games. I will say, like, the Celtics are still managing fine, even without Vucevic, because of what Neemias Queta continues to provide for them this season. I still honestly have faith in them being able to hold it down. Like, he's not a household name, but the man is still contributing double-double to them. He is still providing them with elite two-way play. As a rebounder, as a defender, like, he does everything fairly well for them. So I have no doubt that they're going to be just fine in that regard. The Hornets, as a result of their investigation, or I guess as a sort of clause in the investigation in regards to the entire gambling thing involving Chauncey Billups, and other players and other teams, they had to send a 2026 second round pick to the Heat in a compensatory type of manner. Because at this point, the Heat did trade for Terry Rozier, but they didn't have any idea of any of these kinds of things that are being alleged going on behind the scenes at the time of the deal. They tried to sweep this under the rug. And then the Heat had to take the fucking fault for it. Which was just absolutely fucked up. So hey, they get something back, I guess. For some other recent news from Shams Charania, the Warriors sign Omer Yurtseven to a 10-day contract. Oh yeah, just because that guy had a few good games in Miami. They now wanted to pick that up on their end and take a chance on this guy. Like, do that what you will. The Celtics would sign Max Shulga to a 2-year contract, a standard 2-year contract, after being a two-way player for most of the year. And the Kings, for whatever reason, signed Killian Hayes to a 2-year deal. Honestly, all you Kings fans right now, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this right now. You niggas are about to embrace a multi-year tank. The man is literally named the Tank Commander, and you are now bound to him for multiple years, with decisions to make on all of DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, and Domantas Sabonis in this upcoming offseason. And you know what? For the Kings, in this case, it might be the best direction to take. Get out of this mediocrity while you can and take a fucking direction. Bulls West. Take a damn direction. Go get yourself some high-value draft picks and potential assets that you can use as new franchise guys and younger players to build around. Because if that is the kind of move we're making to ink Killian Hayes to a multi-year deal, I don't see this going any other way. Like, you have to recognize what you're in for. So I'm telling you now, more than likely, you're losing at least 2 of those players. And I'd say that, honestly, Sabonis and LaVine are out of the door because of the fact that they may not want to re-sign them, and probably should not. Again, Sabonis is a good player. You've probably got a cap with him. Zach LaVine is a good player. You see that you had a cap with him, and now they're both hurt, both unavailable at this point of time. DeRozan's playing, and again, he's a similar player in that regard. But even a player of his caliber is going to need help. Because with all of those 2 guys, as I've said before, they are players that can truly lead you to at least a playoff setting. They do not have the ability to carry you over and deeper into the playoffs than a baseline first round setting. That's it. And it's been a struggle for any one of those players to overcome that narrative. They just haven't done it. And to settle for that with this team, that's just a recipe for disaster. And look at where it's got them now. You may as well just, again, move on from at least a couple of them and try to get some younger bodies in that system. You see what you're doing with Massim Reynaud and Dylan Cardwell. Add to that. Lean into that. Stop trying to tiptoe around the fucking problem. Like, you call it Bulls West because the Kings are trying to do exactly what the Bulls have been doing for the past few years. Like, take a damn direction. Rebuild if you have to. It's okay. But you have to stop putting your fans through this shit. That 2023 season, with De'Aaron Fox, with the Domantas Sabonis, y'all had them people thinking that for the first time after making the playoffs and winning a series for the first time, or well, winning a playoff game, I should say, for the first time in 17 years or so to that point. You had them hopeful, aspiring for a new era of Kings basketball. And it's been underwhelming ever since. With you virtually taking a step back year upon year upon year. So you have to move forward. You have to travel out of this mentality. Because it's not going well for you. It's just not. But that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.